AAC Media Day go down last week in Newport, which is definitely a really interesting location given the geographic spread of the conference, but whatever. Any excuse to clam bake and eat lobster is a good one. Couple of highlights: Bob Diaco potentially certifiably insane. We welcome a new member, Navy, to the conference. Justin, you were at the media days. What were your kind of biggest takeaways?
Yeah, I actually didn't make it up till Tuesday, so I missed the clam bake, which is unfortunate. And I got stuck on the Jersey Turnpike for 6 hours because the car caught on fire. So, but that's just my personal issues. But from the actual media days, one of the big things I took away was Mike Oresco continuing to push this idea of the Power Six and going so far as to say that he wants us to be in the college football lexicon by the end of the year this year. That the American is the sixth member of the Power Five. So he's been pushing that. It's not new. He's been doing it for a couple years now. But just for better or for worse, he's continuing to try and push that rhetoric that the American is just as good as any of the other Power Five conferences. Not so sure that's true. But what do you guys think?
I really appreciate that he's taken that angle. I mean, I think that's the angle you have to take as the commissioner of the number 6 conference, at least in terms of money, if not in terms of performance. You could definitely argue that the Mountain West was significantly stronger last year. But that said, I mean, it's a long ways off right now, and especially with all that dead weight at the bottom of the conference. But you could argue that there is reason to be optimistic about the future of the American Athletic Conference, especially given some of these new coaching hires. You got Chad Morris at SMU. He will hopefully have that program turned around in the next couple of years. I mean, that one's going to take a while because they were horrendous last year. But still, that's an A+ hire. That's the best. He was being looked at by some of the top Power 5 schools out there. Same with Tom Herman. Tulsa getting Philip Montgomery from Baylor. I mean, those are probably the 3 best hires you could possibly hope for those 3 schools. And so, I think there's plenty of reason to be optimistic. Optimistic to the point of having a Power 6? I don't know about that. But, at least we're trending upward.
Yeah, it's definitely very, very optimistic to say Power 6. I think, top to bottom, the AAC was clearly not the 6th best football last year. But like you said, I mean, the investment is there with the coaches and facilities. A lot of schools getting new stadiums and stuff like that. I think it's a time that bodes really, really well. And with the money, that's the big thing. That's the reason we're so concerned about the Power 5 and what they're able to do. The AAC does have a monetary advantage over the other conferences, and then I think with the addition of Navy and some of the success that has gone down on the field, particularly I think UCF winning the Fiesta Bowl 2 years ago is a really, really big, really, really big driver of legitimacy for the conference.
Hooray.
To say that, which is something that Boise State is certainly doing, but, as a Mountain West counterpart, but it was a good statement for the AAC in its first year to have UCF winning the Fiesta Bowl, UConn winning the national championship in basketball. Not that that's super relevant to what we're talking about right now.
Always find a way to throw that in, though. So.
Yeah, but I think in time it will definitely become better and separate itself, and I think the new TV deal is going to continue to it's going to really be on this new TV deal. How much can it close the gap behind, I don't know, whichever one of the Power 5 has the smallest deal? How much of that gap can it close, and how much daylight can it put between the AAC and the other conferences? And so, that'll be a crucial set of negotiations for us if you think the AAC is going to hang out in its current state. But it definitely has not been on the field the past 2 years, particularly as Ryan said, with the bottom being the way that it is. But again, you've got up-and-coming teams in the middle like Houston and Temple, and Memphis had a really good season last year. So there's a lot of real reason to be very optimistic about it. And I mean, Oresco is just doing his job. He's getting it out there. There's no way anyone adds the AAC in a conversation and we all decide to start calling it the Power Six this year. That's definitely not happening.
I think we can just start that and see if it catches on. I'm just going to start using Power Six and not pay attention to people correctly.
Yeah, I think that's what he wants. But yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you guys that they've put themselves on the right path with the TV deals and just the programs they have building up, the coaching hires they made that you guys already hit on. They're on the right path, and it's interesting because they asked all the coaches. I sat in on the West Division roundtable at Media Days, and they asked them all, and they all pretty much had a similar answer. You know, what is the next step? And they pretty much all said, you got to win. That's what it comes down to. They got to go out of conference and win some games, and they definitely have the chance to do that this year. UCF gets Stanford and South Carolina. Both of those games, they should be in those games for sure. Cincy gets Miami at home too, so that's a big game for Cincy.
Yeah, they might be favored in that this year.
Yeah, Houston plays Louisville and Vanderbilt. I mean, there's certainly some winnable games to be had in the non-conference, but they're gonna have to go out and win a few of those if they want to continue to strive for legitimacy. But I think they're certainly putting pressure on the other Group of 5 conferences, and I think we'll continue to see, especially with the Mountain West, this kind of AAC Mountain West rivalry develop a little bit. I mean, with Navy joining, the Mountain West commissioner was pretty much the only one saying that the Army-Navy game, you know, that Navy shouldn't be allowed to be considered for a New Year's Six Bowl with the Army-Navy game still hanging out after conference championship weeks. I mean, he's literally the only person I know of in the country saying that shouldn't be allowed. And I think we'll continue to see a little bit of a Mountain West AAC rivalry as the AAC brings itself up on par, hopefully, with the Mountain West.
And in public perception, I feel like one of the most important things that the American can do is to get a team in that Group of 5 Access Bowl. You know, they weren't able to do that last year. In fact, they really were not in the running for the most part. I mean, it was, for most of the year, Marshall versus Boise State. And so you guys think that they'll send one this year? I mean, Cincinnati, you'd have to think, has a very good shot.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I haven't done my full kind of survey of the teams of the AAC, but I think Cincinnati has a good shot. And to go back to last year really quickly, East Carolina was kind of in the conversation, sort of.
That's very true. In the beginning of the year, they were actually right up there.
Yeah, I guess they're losing. They lost a lot of seniors from last year, particularly their quarterback, who was really good, and so they're probably not going to be that contender this year. But I think you're absolutely right. The AAC has to just own that spot. And this year, Cincinnati's the horse. It feels like everyone feels very good about Cincinnati and their chances this year, which to me makes it seem as though they're probably primed for a disappointing season. But if it's going to be anyone in the AAC this year, we'll have to say Cincinnati or maybe Memphis if they can, if they can build on last year and improve, which is certainly possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think the tough part of being a Group of 5 team striving to be that, best of the Group of 5 to get that New Year's Six Bowl is you have to have someone that just dominates the conference. So is it good for the AAC to have a team like Cincinnati that can run the table and continue to have the dead weight that you guys talked about at the bottom for a few more years? Do we want everybody? I mean, it's kind of one of those interesting debates. Do you want the conference as a whole to bring its level of play up to increase the overall conference legitimacy, or do we really actually just need one team to run the table and get into that New Year's Six Bowl?
Yeah, I mean, people definitely anchor their opinions on the win-loss record, especially since I would imagine the majority of poll voters don't watch a ton of Group of 5 football. But I think it's going to be a big. Sorry, I completely lost my train of thought. There was something random. What were we talking about?
whether a team needs to run the table or whether we need.
Oh, sorry. So I think it was interesting. Marshall went undefeated last year, and no one really even talked about it because there wasn't a lot of respect for that conference. I think the AAC has enough respect where if you go undefeated, if you were to go undefeated in the AAC, particularly, if you were to go undefeated in the AAC, I think I think that's a really, really strong statement, and I think that probably gets you in. The conference is pretty competitive, though. I mean, to me, it's a question of, is the conference too competitive for somebody to go undefeated and run the table, and is that hurting us? That's kind of how I feel about it, because especially if you look at some of the teams, it's not an easy slate. So I think that's more of a concern for me looking at the scenario and the situation.
Yeah, and it's tough, especially when you look at Boise State, who was supposed to have a down year last year, and they managed to get that slot with 2 losses, which, like you said, was an encouraging precedent for favoring strength of schedule over record, even in the group of 5. But, they're going to be really good. I wouldn't expect them to have more than 1 or 2 losses. So some AAC team is going to have to really, really have a nice season if they want to get that slot. And I don't know if there are too many teams in the AAC capable of only losing 1 or 2 games this season.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And Cincy is the one that comes to mind, especially since they get Miami, we already talked about, and they got to play BYU, and then that's pretty much it outside of their AAC schedule. So, I mean, I guess potentially Memphis. I don't personally expect Houston to do it this year, though I think they'll be there, within a couple years. And then, I guess UCF maybe is still around there, but all those teams outside of Cincy, I wouldn't feel comfortable projecting them to a New Year's Six bowl right now.
Yeah. Let's actually go back to Navy a little bit because, first of all, I think they're a great addition to the conference for a variety of reasons. It's been a very good football team. They have a national fan base. Annapolis is a wonderful place to go visit, an attractive road destination. And, I mean, they finished 3rd in the voting for the West. I think they got a handful of first-place votes. I think there's a really good shot that they win the West. But, Justin, for our listeners, the AAC football enthusiasts who may not be so familiar with Navy, could you give us like an introduction as if you didn't know anything about Navy football?
Yeah, sure. I think the most important place to start with is with kind of just Navy's mindset right now. So Navy's been a pretty successful program, at least by their standards, over the last decade or so. Ever since Paul Johnson came to Navy in the early 2000s and really turned the program around, and then headed on to Georgia Tech. Coach Ken Niumatalolo has done a tremendous job since then. He's now the all-time winningest coach in Navy history. They've been to 11 bowl games in 12 years. Only had 1 losing season in that span. Consistently winning 8 or 9 games a year. Few big wins against Notre Dame, 3 out of 4 years in a row. In that span, took Ohio State to the brink in Columbus a few years ago. Took South Carolina to the brink and let that one get away in the 4th quarter in Columbia. They've had some quality wins and played some quality teams, and so that kind of lends itself to the team's mindset. And I think that they're feeling a little bit underappreciated going into what they bring to the conference. Everybody wants to talk, and you listen to Oresco's talk during the media day, and he's talking about the tradition, the great young men that they bring, the leaders they bring on and off the field, and that's all true. No one's denying that, but I think Coach Ken, he mentioned, he made a couple comments during the media days about those kind of things, that we're going to hold the door open for women, but we're also going to punch you in the mouth whenever you come to play us. We're here to compete. We produce fighters at the Naval Academy, and we're going to fight. And then he made a very, very interesting comment about the fact that we didn't come from the NAIA, and I think he feels a little slighted. And when I talked to him at Navy media days on Saturday, he basically said that it had been something that was a little, had been brewing inside him. It came out maybe a little different than he wanted it to, but just this idea that we didn't come from the FCS up to FBS and add that 12th team needed for a conference championship game. We came to compete from day one. We've played a lot of the teams in the American over the last 10, 15 years, and we've had a fair amount of success against those teams. So I think you're exactly right. I mean, they should be a contender in the West with Memphis and Houston, hopefully, and so that's kind of where their mindset is. As far as Navy in general, everybody's going to, of course, talk about the triple option. So they run the triple option. They have ever since Paul Johnson came back and reinstalled it, and they do it extremely well. They execute the triple option to perfection, even more so than Georgia Tech does, in my opinion. So it's going to be a tough challenge because that is a offensive scheme that none of the other teams probably are going to face, except for when they play Navy. So there may be some adjustment period for the other teams in the conference as they kind of figure this out, playing Navy, especially if you're in the West, playing them every year. It's going to provide some challenges for sure. So they're also one of the least penalized teams in the country. In the last 5 years, they've been either number 1 or number 2 in fewest penalties allowed and fewest penalty yards per game. And they know that being a smaller team, they're not putting out 320-pound linemen in general. They're going to be undersized. That they have to do that. They have to execute, not have penalties, and then not turn the ball over. And unfortunately, last year that was kind of their undoing. They actually had a very uncharacteristic year when it came to turnovers. So that's kind of where they sit. They bring in Keenan Reynolds as their quarterback, and he's 3.5-year start. He'll be, if he's a 3-year starter now, 2.5-year starter. He'll be in his 4th season overall, where he's started some games, and he is the record-setting quarterback. I mean, he's up there with Staubach now, and you, as a Navy fan, you couldn't really ever imagine putting someone else in the conversation with Roger Staubach, but he's breaking records left and right. He already owns the record for most rushing touchdowns by a QB in NCAA history. And then overall, for any position, he's in 4th place right now. He needs 13 TDs to tie 14 to break Monty Ball's all-time record of 77 that he set at Wisconsin. So, I mean, he's done big things at Navy over his 3 years. And so with him guiding the offense, I don't expect too much of a drop-off as they enter the conference.
Nice.
I'm sorry, Mom. You can go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. You go ahead.
All right, so it really seems like you nailed it with Navy really being the most proven entity in the West. And while I don't think anyone thinks Navy's going to have a bad year, I don't think people realize that. And people are hopping on the Houston train or thinking that Memphis is going to have another good year. But I think that Navy is probably the safest bet in that division to go in and win it in year 1. And also, on the note of their offense, that's something that everybody is quick to mention when it comes to Navy. What kind of defenses have had success against Navy in the past? Like, if you are playing Navy, what must you be able to do to stop the triple option?
You have to. It's assignment football. You have to play your gap if you're on defense. So when they're going against all these spread teams and people want to have the defensive end standing up and ready just to bull rush the passer every time, that's not going to work in the triple option. You have to play your assignment each play. Your quarterback, the fullback, what we call the A back, the fullback, or the B back, the slot backs. You're assigned to one of them, and if you don't play your gap and if you don't play your assignment and you decide to be the hero and try and make stop the quarterback, stop Keenan, that's a pitch and 20, 30-yard game waiting to happen. So it really is assignment football, and I think that with all the spread option offenses, that especially now those 3 coordinators we already talked about that are moving into the conference that all ran some form of the spread, I really think that hurts you when you go to try and adjust to a triple option team, because you can't just pin your ears back and get after the quarterback. You really have to pay attention to your assignments.
Interesting. Yeah, that's good. That's good stuff, because UConn actually does play Navy and Army this year, interestingly enough. So I'll get to watch the option attack a couple of times this year. I definitely agree with both of you guys are saying about Navy being a lot better than I think people are expecting. I think they will win the West this year. And then the other part that's really interesting or exciting is that I think the program is going to see a rise as a result of being in the conference. I think they'll be able to recruit a little bit better, and I think it'll hopefully be a boon for their football program in general, where they build on this past 8 to 10 years of success and can actually potentially even take it to another level. So I was wondering, Justin, what is kind of the sense from the fan base? I mean, this news came out in like 2012, so obviously a lot has happened since then.
Yeah.
But how is the fan base? How did the fan base feel about the move to the conference? Were a lot of them very married to the independent idea, and maybe enjoyed the flexibility in scheduling that being independent offered, or do you think most people see it as we had to become a player in the game, and this was the best option?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't want to alienate the Navy fan base by trying to divide it into two camps, but in my opinion, you have, and it's the Navy. The Navy's been around since the beginning of the country, right? We're very tradition oriented, right? We like our tradition, and so I would say the general fan that is just kind of the superficial fan, if you will, on the surface, doesn't really pay attention year round, isn't just a diehard, reading the message boards every day, was not happy about the move. They like being independent. They like the flexible scheduling, like you said. They thought that they didn't see a reason why we needed to make that jump. Now, I would say the more in tune fan who pays attention more to what's actually going on, and is what I would consider more of a diehard fan, would realize some of the benefits that jumping to the conference has. You hit on a couple of them. I mean, one being exposure. I think one of the key things is, for past 134 years, if you're a Navy opponent, you care about Navy for 1 week out of the year, and that's the week leading up to your game. And then once that game's over, they're an independent. They don't have any say in the rest of your season, and so you don't care about them. But they have 12 teams that care about them 1 week a year. But now in the conference, I mean, not just the extra TV exposure, but people are going to care about how Navy's doing, assuming they're doing well throughout the year, right? Because they're having an impact on the conference race to get to the championship game, hopefully. So I think that's one big thing. And then the other one, I think, is you already kind of hit on it with the recruiting, and that's been mentioned several times by Coach Ken and by Chet Gladchuk, the athletic director, is that they're going to play in Texas every year because of being in the West. They have SMU in Houston, and Texas is pretty much number one or number two in Navy recruits where they come from. But being able to play in Texas and Florida and Oklahoma and Ohio, every once in a while with Cincinnati, and Tennessee with Memphis, these are places where Navy's has had success recruiting to a degree in the past, but that's where they're going to want to pull players from. And I think it will have a huge recruiting benefit for Coach Ken to be able to walk into someone's house in Texas and say, my son, or your son, sorry, if they come play for Navy, we will play in Texas at least once every year. That's huge. So
nice. I think that's it. Ryan, is there anything else from a Navy perspective that we want to cover, or just general stuff that we want to cover with Justin?
Got any more media day questions? I think we pretty much covered it.
No, I think it's pretty good. I do have one question for you, Amon.
Sure.
So, well, first of all, your Bob Diaco is crazy. He is a ball of energy. That dude goes nonstop, which I think is awesome. He was my favorite coach that was there. The media team over at UConn. I went around. I first showed up to media days as more of a fan. I'm super excited. I've never been to one of these. I walk up to the lady at the desk, and she's like, take whatever you want, right? There's all this swag out all over the desk. I'm like, I told her, I was like, you're going to regret saying that. So I'm just like filling my book bag with anything and everything I could get my hands on. Then I go around to all the different teams, and they got all these nice colored spiral-bound media guides at all the schools. And then there's UConn, which I know you can't see it, but it's about a 12-page pamphlet stapled together. And it was the only one like that. Any insight as to why that would be?
Yeah, I have no idea. I would assume that you're diplomatic here, but I mean, I know that in past years, I went to Media Day last year, and they had a normal spiral bound media guide. So, yeah, I had heard that. I don't know what to make of it, but
Okay. I was
yeah,
just curious. It was the only one like that. So.
yeah, definitely not a good look for UConn. And yeah, Bob Diaco, I mean, he's an insane person. I personally love it. Some people are taking it as embarrassing or whatever, blah blah blah. And there's some like real Diaco haters already within the UConn fan base. But I personally, I love insane people. I think they're extraordinarily entertaining, and he really put on a show. And the thing is, he's getting UConn's name out there. However, it is happening, and so, yeah.
It's not. I mean, it's not like he's done it. It's not like he's. I don't see it as a negative. It's not like he's doing it because he's. I don't have an example, but something criminal or whatever. He's just
exactly
a little crazy. But you're exactly right. I mean, the more exposure, the better, right? Getting the brand out there. So.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, Justin, thanks so much for joining. And yeah, Ryan, just download that MP4 and send it to me, and I can get it to our sound editor. And let's coordinate a time via email to record that second part as well.
All right, absolutely. We'll make that happen. I'll get it to you tonight.
Thanks, guys, for having me on. I may or may not make the drive up to Connecticut, but if I do, I'll hit you up for the Navy UConn game. So.
All right, cool. Yeah, and if you wanted to, what do you cover? You're covering Navy for Underdog Dynasty.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you wanted to do like I will want to do with you a like Q&A the week of.
Yeah, for sure.
And actually, maybe even one before the season. So let's definitely stay in touch, and I'd be happy to do the same for you as part of your coverage for Navy.
Sounds great. Appreciate it.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
Yep. You guys have a good night.
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.